I am a junker, as I've been called. I like to go to thrift stores. I like to go to yard sales. I love to go to auctions. I love to find stuff that's been discarded, that's vintage, that needs a little help, and I like to work on it and customize it. But I especially like it when I need something and I'm going to a thrift store or a yard sale and I'm looking for that one item. It's the hunt that excites me. And that was last Saturday. Last Saturday, needed a lamp. We had just finished the last bedroom in our Airbnb, and there was no lamp on the bedside table. So I went to a yard sale and I found this lamp. And in this video, we are going to decoupage this lampshade and give this base a faux finish that'll match our new bedroom. I'm Peggy, and welcome to the studio. I started with the lampshade, which was a little bit old and a little grungy looking. So the first thing I am doing is I am putting on a coat of primer. It is a Pent Art primer, and I'm covering that whole lampshade, and it is white, so I am going to use that as my base coat, and I am just painting the whole thing. I am using this really pretty blue rice paper from Decoupage Queen. And the next thing I did was kind of get the design, the shape of the lampshade by rolling it. You could see it's called Maison Bleu. And by rolling the shade along the back of the paper. And if I were to do this again, what I would do is make a pattern, the whole pattern out of brown paper, and then I would cut it out of the lampshade paper because it was a little tricky for me, and because I needed two pieces to get around the whole lamp, it just didn't come out quite like I would have wanted it to. But we improvised and we actually loved the way it came out. So here I am. I'm taking a pencil, I'm holding the lampshade down on the paper, and I'm just tracing over the curved edge as I roll it. And I did that twice, so I would have two pieces the same size because I needed one and just about a third more, but it was a little hard to get it cut exactly how I wanted it. So like I said, I would have made a pattern of the whole thing, and then I would have either maybe taped the paper together just for that little bit of time, and then taken it and used the pattern to cut the paper exactly. Whenever you do anything on a curve or a rounded, you always have a lot of waste because I'm cutting it from a flat piece of paper. So I had a lot of little pieces of waste, which I put aside from some art journaling or some scrapbooking later on. But I am ready to now to decoupage this paper down to this lampshade. There's a lot of texture on this lampshade, so you see me pushing it down. I'm using decoupage glue and varnish to do it. But you can see when it's all done, there's still a lot of texture, but it worked out just fine. It's a fabric, basically, it's a textured fabric lampshade that I am decoupaging paper onto. And that's all I did is just take it, and I tried to use enough of the glue because it is fabric and it was absorbing the glue as fast as I was putting it down. So I go back and put more down afterwards. But it worked all the way around. And then it was time to add the second piece. And I didn't want it to have that funny angle. So I went ahead and cut it, but it already had some glue on it, so it kind of wasn't too happy to cut. So it worked out though. I wanted it to be straight up and down. Once I had all my pieces pieced together and everything decoupaged to the lampshade, I went ahead and put a coat of varnish over the whole thing, and then I just let it dry while I was working on the lampshade base. To finish off the lampshade, I wanted to add I'm going to call it a trim, but it's the same paper. I wanted to add a little piece along the bottom that went up and over into the inside that covered the bottom edge. So I cut two pieces of the same paper in 1-inch strips. And then what I did is I glued them on the outside about 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch from the bottom, and let it go underneath and glued it underneath in the same exact way. So it kind of just covers that bottom edge. I think the video actually shows better than what I'm trying to explain, but you can see that the fabric went on the outside and then it goes folded under on the inside, and it covers that bottom bump. There's a bump there, and it was a little bit aged, so I really wanted to make it look more finished. So it actually came out really perfectly, and then I did the exact same thing on the top just to finish it off and give it more. And there was a border on the original shade, so it was really easy to get it even because I just followed the line of the original border and went ahead and glued it right down. So you can see there very much how I just followed that edge, glued it down, and then pushed what was left to the other side and on the inside, and it actually held amazingly well. The final thing that I did on the lampshade was top coat it, and I wanted a gloss, so I did use a glossy varnish, and I did do 2 coats of top coat in a glossy varnish. The lampshade and the base were basically in pretty good condition, but I just wanted a different style. So I cleaned this base really well with a degreaser. Because it was a lamp, it probably had been touched a lot, and I wanted to make sure my paint was going to stick. So I cleaned it really well with a degreaser, and then I rinsed it off and let it set for a little bit, and then it was ready to get a primer on it. I am using the Pentart Bonding Primer. It is an all-surface bonding primer, and I am going to just paint it on. It's not a really thick coat, it's kind of a thin coat, and cover the whole surface and then let it dry. And I gave it a really good drying time. The next step was my base coat, and I am using Wise Owl Paint Heavy Metals in the color bronze. And I am going to give this a good even coat, the whole thing, and then let it dry. And it will take overnight to dry. If you like this look, you could just stop here, but I am going to be making an antiqued look, and I want this to be my base coat. For this part, we are going to use that tiny little sea sponge, and I am going to dampen it because it is pretty dry. And then I'm going to start dipping it in 2 different color paints. I am using a robin's egg blue, which is kind of like a super soft teal, and then I'm using a deeper teal. And I am taking the sea sponge and just dipping it in, wiping some of it off, and then I am literally sponging it on to the lamp base. So this is at least a 3-step process, and I start by just sponging on the lightest color, the robin's egg blue, over the whole thing. And once I like the way that that looks, I am going to then pick up the darker teal and I'm going to sponge right over it. And I'm definitely going to sponge one color over the other while it's still damp. And the reason I'm doing this is because you get more color variation because you're mixing the colors as you go along because they're still damp. So I just continue to add a little bit of the light blue and then the darker blue. And then at the end, I am actually stippling on some of the brass again, just along the edges, and to really give it just a little more interest and highlight. And all of this is pretty matte. So at the end, you'll see I am going to make sure that this has a nice sheen to it. Once all of those steps was completely dry, all the paint was dry, then the finishing touches began. And the first thing I'm putting on is a wax, and this is an antiquing wax. It's actually a dark coffee color, and I am just putting it all over the whole piece. And you'll notice that it doesn't totally cover. I'm really wiping it in and just using a little bit at a time. And once I have all of the wax on, I have it all darkened and antiqued, then I am just going to put a furniture salve on, which is going to give it that sheen. And that once that is dry, my lamp is totally done and ready to be put on the side table. And here is what the patina looks like. Excuse the mess in the background. I haven't cleaned up my workspace yet.